Afternoon, everybody. We're really pleased to welcome you to this virtual open day for nursing at University of Southampton. We're really thrilled that you're able to join us. We love doing these days. So you know who's talking to you. My name is Jim Bird. I'm an adult nurse and still practice occasionally as a nurse. Work as a lecturer. My main role is in admissions, so I oversee the academic side of admissions to all our nursing programs. I'm really pleased to welcome you here on behalf of the university. What we're going to do this afternoon is to have several people speak to us for just a very short periods. We have all the admissions tutors for nursing with us who will introduce themselves. We have some student ambassadors with us who will also introduce themselves, and we hope to spend around 40 minutes walking you through some of the highlights of our programs, and then also to invite questions, and we will respond to those. Within this Teams chat, Teams function, you will see one side of your screen or another a Q&A tab. Really encourage you to put your questions in there. We do multiple sessions like this, and after speaking to many thousands of aspiring nursing students, there has yet to be a foolish question. We really want to support you and your aspiration to nurse. So please feel free to put questions in there right from the outset. We will probably answer most of them live to camera a little bit later on, but we'll make sure that everything is answered before we conclude this session. So my job to start with is really to give you a moment's introduction to nursing. And nursing is an interesting thing. It's quite difficult to define what it is. Some people talk about nursing as a science, and you know that is in fact correct. Nursing has a lot of science to it. We look for there to be an evidence base around what we do, rather than treat and support patients and clients with good ideas. We look there for there to be an underpinning knowledge base, something that's probably arisen from research, tried and tested research that's taken place over the last few years, or maybe a little bit further back, but demonstrable methods of being able to deliver the best possible care to patient A, B, C, or whoever it happens to be in front of us at any particular time. So nursing, what is it? Well, it's definitely a science. Nursing, I'd like to argue, is also something creative. You see, every single person we encounter as a nurse will have a unique set of needs. Of course, every person on the planet is a unique individual. We often group them into somewhat sort of similar perhaps groupings, and of course that's really very unfair. Every individual has unique needs, and at the point of being unwell to need nursing care, then the needs are themselves particularly unique at that particular moment, and they will be unique on a given day and a given hour, often on a given moment in time, just a fragment of time. Needs will change, and we need to be able to respond creatively and appropriately, insightfully. We need to be using, yes, to use the science, but also to use our own experience, our own experiences of working in practice, our own experiences of life, and putting those together in order to identify a unique solution for unique people at unique points in their life. So nursing, yes, it's definitely a science, and it's definitely something creative. We're trying to solve, trying to support individuals at probably the greatest moments of need they've ever had in their lives to date. I'd also like to argue that nursing is very much about humanity, and it's perhaps easy to say, well, that's obvious, but actually there's a reality to this, in that we are unique individuals, but also we are not just physical beings. We have minds, we have physical health needs, we may have needs of our mental well-being, we have emotional well-being, and actually that's all wrapped up. Those things together and much more make us to be the human beings that we are, everyone unique. You know, many of the people we care for will look somewhat similar to you. They may have life trajectories that are somewhat similar to you. But in nursing, it's true that every single person on the planet is potentially somebody we might care for. The majority of those people are, of course, delightful individuals, and we readily acknowledge that. But some have had hard life circumstances. The response of some is not quite the one that we would expect. They may not be particularly thankful or grateful for our services, although thankfully the majority are, but some aren't. Some cannot be. Some may not be able to express those emotions. Some may be able to express themselves very well at all. Of course, some of the people we care for have lost some of those fairly fundamental functions that we associate with life, things such as communication, or the ability to engage, ability to touch, ability to hear. The senses may be limited at periods of time, and yet still the person in front of us is a human being who we would want to treat exactly the same as we would treat close relatives and best friends. In fact, one of the benchmarks of nursing is that we would seek to treat other people that we don't know, complete strangers, in the same way that we would want to be treated ourselves, or our immediate family treated. I feel like that's setting a bit of the benchmark for what is nursing. And this last picture, I'm going to be just a few more moments, is really just to make the point that nursing is for a very wide body of people. These pictures are fairly random, I'm afraid, from the university website. But they're just portraying this briefest of glimpse into the individuals that come to university, that study nursing, people of all ages, people of every different description. We are very pleased to welcome, we're excited to welcome to our nursing programs. And equally, as you see, great diversity in the pictures here. Equally, that's representing a little bit of the enormous diversity we have in the clients and patients we care for. And if you just think for a moment about the people you can see on the screen now, maybe the person who's at home with you now, or other people who are important to you. Of course, we see people in nursing at that great point of need. Not the happy smiley faces we can see in the pictures here, people enjoying themselves, perhaps in a first week or two at university. But in nursing, we see people who are often unable to help themselves. They don't have the facilities, they don't have the personal strengths or wherewithal to be able to fix themselves. I often put it like this: if we have a headache in the morning, I think most of us would be a bit annoyed with it. We take some paracetamol and we carry on at school, college or work in exactly the same way as normal. We've essentially fixed ourselves. Or if we have a dose of flu, perhaps I can call it man flu momentarily, and you'll know what I mean, in that we feel pretty rubbish about ourselves. We don't feel good. We've got a headache, we sore throat, and we think, okay, well, I'm not well enough to do a normal day. I need to be off sick today. But again, we fix it ourselves. We spend the day in bed, we have lots of hot drinks or whatever is necessary, ask somebody to pamper us with chocolate and fine wine or whatever your choice happens to be. But we fix ourselves. We don't nurse people with those sets of needs. We nurse people who don't have that capacity to help themselves in their sets of needs at the moment. If you like, the worst days, that's when we often begin to engage with people. So that's a moment snapshot. I'm going to take no more time at all, and I'm going to pass over to my colleague Julie, who will introduce herself perfectly well by herself.
Thank you, Jim. So afternoon, everyone. My name's Julie Kearns. I'm an adult nurse by background with 31 years experience, and I feel incredibly lucky to be part of the amazing team that deliver our adult nursing programs here at the university, to share with you my absolute passion for nursing and my experience. So why come to Southampton to study adult nursing? Well, you'll learn two key skill sets. The first is around your clinical skills, and that is how you treat the condition that your patient presents with, should that be a heart attack, an asthmatic attack. You will learn how to monitor your patient and observe for deterioration, and then you will learn the different levels of resuscitation to stop the patient deteriorating. You'll do that learning in our amazing skills lab, in groups and with your fellow peers and your fellow students, and it's a really safe space to learn and practice the clinical skills. Just to give you a snapshot of what some of those will be, you'll learn how to record a patient's blood pressure, temperature, pulse, do their blood sugars, do a heart tracing, and you'll also learn how to administer medications into the patient's bloodstream through a little cannula, intravenous fluids. And you'll also learn the fundamentals of nursing around the infection control procedures, so your hand hygiene and your safe use of PPE. So that's your clinical skills. The second skill set you will learn is around your non-clinical skills. And for me, it's these that are the real essence of nursing. So one of the things to never forget is when you meet your patients, they will all have one thing in common, and that is that they are scared, because it's a very frightening thing to become unwell and be admitted to hospital. One of the key non-clinical skills that you will learn and develop throughout your adult nursing programme is called empathy. And empathy is when you put yourself in the patient's shoes and you try to understand how they are feeling, and then you tailor your care to that. So if we imagine you're looking after a patient who's got a broken leg, they cannot get out of bed and they need to use the toilet. So by putting yourself in their shoes, you will understand the real sense of embarrassment that they're going to have to ask for help to use the toilet. They're going to have to remove their clothing in front of a stranger, be helped on and off the bedpan, and then have to be helped with the most intimate personal care, which is making sure that they are clean after they have used the bedpan. You will also understand that real fear that somebody may come into your bed space, pull the curtains back while you're using the bedpan. So because you understand how your patient is feeling, then you will take measures to try and reduce those feelings of embarrassment and anxiety. You may well check with your colleagues that it's okay to move your patient on their bed into a large bathroom so they can have complete privacy and dignity. If that's not an option, you will peg a do not disturb sign to their curtains and make sure their curtains are completely closed and peg them together to really reduce the chances of somebody entering the bed space. And it's really important because you will explain to your patients what you've done, and that really reassures them that you care about them and you've taken all the measures to maintain their privacy and dignity. So a nurse without empathy won't consider those things, and that leaves their patients very vulnerable. And that's what we don't want. So it's very easy to see that it's the combination of clinical skills along with your non-clinical skills that will transform you from an average adult nursing student into that extraordinary adult nursing student. And it's extraordinary nurses that graduate from Southampton University. So being an adult nurse is an absolute privilege, and Jim's alluded to this, but every shift that you work, you are making a difference, a positive difference to your patients and their families, probably during some of the darkest times in their lives. And that's what gives you the immense job satisfaction. So if you want to be an extraordinary adult nurse, come and join us here at Southampton University and begin the most rewarding, challenging and exciting journey of your life. So thank you for listening, and I'm going to hand you over to my colleague Martin now, who's going to talk to you about mental health nursing.
Thank you, Julie, and welcome. My name is Martin Grant. I'm a lecturer in mental health nursing. So why would you choose mental health nursing? Well, for myself, I had a fascination, I still do, in psychology, and particularly how the mind works. But rather than an academic career, I actually wanted to contribute to making a meaningful difference, which builds on what Julie said before. And so I looked at mental health nursing, but I wasn't sure exactly what kind of things mental health nurses do. Something Jim said before about whether it's a science or an art. I mean, the main textbook that we use is it specifically says it is both. And so that taps into the actual difference you can make by building those therapeutic relationships in clinical practice, which is critical and key to the recovery model of progress in mental health. Now that you can have a very varied career, I certainly had a very varied career in mental health nursing. I began in high secure in forensic psychiatry, not to give you a CV, but just to explain how broad it can be. And then I've worked in liaison psychiatry, medium secure units. I've also developed skills and trained in psychotherapy, in something called psychodynamic interpersonal therapy for emergency medicine or emergency mental health. And I had no idea such areas even existed before I started. So the opportunities have expanded over those 20 years, where ultimately you can run your own clinic. So I had my own clinic in A&E, in the emergency department, as it's called now. So that sense of responsibility, accountability, but also deliverables, so you can actually see outcomes, positive outcomes for people. I found this excellent, but equally I had another area of expertise that I really wanted to get into, which was law. So I then trained as a lawyer. So I trained in law, then I specialised in mental health and medical law, and then trained at the bar. And now, interestingly, practicing in law is somewhat different to some degree. And actually, when I thought which is right for me, I actually came back to nursing, because I realised that the ethics of what we do and how we do it chimes more with the way I want to do things. So, for example, if I'm representing a client in law, I'm representing that client. That's it. No matter what. Whereas in nursing, it's about the bigger picture of that individual. It's not just winning a case. It's actually trying to find the best for that particular individual, even especially when they're highly vulnerable, again, as Julie said, in mental health, where they may not know what is best for themselves. And whilst it might sound a little bit paternalistic, it's not, because we are recovery focused, but we do see that holistic bigger picture with contributions from family, with themselves, and also seeing them progress towards recovery rather than just acting for them. So that's my little story. It's my very brief kind of introduction to mental health nursing. If you have any queries, please do ask in the Q&A section. And I'm going to hand over now to my colleague Terry Fletcher, who's going to now discuss about children's.
I apologise, I swore I wouldn't be the first one to leave their mic muted. I'm terribly sorry. My name is Terry Fletcher, and welcome this afternoon, and thank you to Martin. Well, that's a lot for me to follow, so I'm going to try not to repeat some of the things they've already said, but many of the things that Julie has talked about being an adult nurse, and Jim obviously has done the background to nursing, and Martin about mental health nursing, actually fits within being a children's nurse. Because children experience all of the same things, but in a different way. So as I said, I'm a children's nurse. You might not have heard that bit. And I've been nursing since 1979. So I basically trained with Florence, not quite Crimean, but it was a very task-orientated profession, very, very different to the profession we see today. I also trained in the armed forces, which again was a very different start for me, but was an excellent experience. I had an outstanding time, work hard, play hard, a bit like I would like you to come to university at Southampton and have the same philosophy. We want you to work hard, but we also want you to play hard. We want you to enjoy your time at university. It's important. I stayed in the army for a while, trained as an adult nurse, and then decided to become a children's nurse. And the army wanted me to owe them 22 years, so I decided I didn't quite want to work with them for that long, so I left and did my children's nurse training in a beautiful London hospital, which sadly no longer exists. It's a housing complex now on greenbelt land just outside of London. And then I went to Saudi Arabia. And rather like Martin, this little bit of background is really a way to explore the richness of children's nursing, what you can do with your qualifications, where you can go. I worked as a children's nurse in Jeddah, in the King Khalid Hospital, and I worked with individuals who lived in the towns, but also the Bedouins from the desert. And you see such a wealth of cultural diversity. I work with people from all over the world in different roles within that environment, and I learned so much. And then I came back to the UK and went to the South Coast and lived in Portsmouth. And I worked in the Children's Hospital in Portsmouth for a while, and if successful and you decide to come onto our programme, that's one of the trusts that you may work in. I've worked with children of all ages, and in many areas, medicine, surgery, oncology, neonates, those little tiny rat-like creatures. But most of my career in practice has been in urgent and unscheduled care, so acute assessment of sick children. And that involves working with children and families at their most vulnerable. They're in an environment that's frightening to them. They don't know what's happening with their child. Their child is terrified, and they will take their cues from their parents. So we always must remember as children's nurses that our parents are our partners in caring for that child. Because if the parents are scared, the child will remain scared. So very much it's working with the parent and the child. I became a lecturer with the University of Southampton because I wanted to work with outstanding, dynamic future nurses. That could be you in the future if you decide to come to us. But also to work with a university that strives for excellence in healthcare. There's a lot of research ongoing within the school itself that underpins much of the work that's going on in practice. I've given you a brief insight to what I did, but as you can imagine, I've gathered skills and experience along the way. But central to that is coming back to my passion for supporting children and families. You need to respect and recognise their individuality, and that we need to provide them with excellent holistic care. I keep coming back to the parents, but children don't come in isolation. They have parents, grandparents, aunts, uncles, siblings, adoptive families, step families. They also can come with incredibly complex family dynamics that have a profound impact on how we care for that child and their family. I think for me, thinking about what I would have wanted as a child in hospital, think about yourselves, think about your own childhood and teenage years. How would you want to have been cared for? But importantly, who would you want to have been involved in your care? So the other key element of children's nursing is recognising the rights of children, the rights of them not only to have excellent care, but to be listened to be understood as much as we can. And if we don't understand, to try and find a way of working out how we can understand what their needs are. They can be physical, they can be emotional and psychological, which is why what Martin said and what Julie said very much underpins much of what we do in child health. Think about how scary that is coming into hospital, how scary it is to be unwell and not know what's wrong with you. Think about that parent with a tiny baby, their precious child who's unwell, and they don't quite know what to do, and they come to you and they hand that child to you. They're giving you a lot of responsibility, and we need to take responsibility for that, and we need to respect the parents for their decisions. The variety and scope of child nursing means you need a unique understanding of child development. So one of the key things to prepare before coming onto a child nursing programme is to develop those skills, learn a bit about child development. We will talk to you about it when you come onto the programme, and we provide resources about that. And we talk about the unique challenges across the age continuum. I've already mentioned in infancy, but also to young people, to young adolescents. Children can stay within child services up until they're about 21, depending on why they're there. Some children and young people leave much earlier and go into adult services much earlier, but that's very much a choice for many of them. There will be highs and there will be lows. The other thing to recognise with children is not all children get well. Some children live with lifelong and life-limiting conditions, and children do sadly die. And that is part of the role that children's nurses need to encompass, working with children and families at their highest point in time, so from the birth of a baby. We're not midwives, but we do work closely with midwives. But we are often there when a child dies, so at that very precious end point of life. And as a children's nurse, Julie quite rightly said it's a privilege to work with people, but for me it's a privilege to be a children's nurse and to work with children and families at the high points in their life, through the struggles in their lives, but also sometimes at the saddest and most difficult part of their life. Children aren't only cared for in hospital, so you may see children anywhere, hospital, community, in their homes, in schools. It's a dynamic, ever-developing field. We're learning things all the time. And whilst I said at the beginning about nurse training with Florence and the Crimean, Jim and I, and probably Julie, are of an age where we remember certain practices that fortunately are no longer seen. are no longer undertaken in practice, and now we may find them highly unusual, perhaps slightly risky, and we don't do that. That's the development of nursing. That's how nursing moves forward. And I'm sure my colleagues would perhaps disagree with me when I say children's nursing is one of the fastest paced, the fastest changing professions as we move forward. So Julie would, and Jim would say the same about adult, and Martin definitely about mental health. But for me, I see child nursing as dynamically changing constantly. I've also thought a lot about what makes a good children's nurse. So apart from high academic achievement and hearing people, they want to make a difference in children's lives. But we also need to recognise children aren't small adults. I remember that the key to being a good children's nurse is to nurture your inner child and quite like children. And with that, I will hand over to, I think it's May, or Jim. No, hand over to Jim, sorry.
Thank you very much, Terry and Martin and Julie. It's been very, very brief. So what we've heard about so far are three core disciplines: adult nursing, mental health nursing and children's nursing, in that order. And as a university, we run 3-year honours degree, Bachelor of Science degrees in those 3 programmes, which lead to registration as a nurse in that particular field, as well as the degree from the university. A different set of programmes we run, which I'm only going to briefly allude to, is that we're also one of the few universities that offers what we loosely call dual field nursing, dual programmes. These are 4-year programmes delivered alongside the 3-year programmes that lead to the 3 final awards rather than 2. They lead to award of an integrated master's degree. Just pause there briefly. That's not a 3-year degree plus a year. It's a 4-year programme from the outset, so it's an integrated master's, and it leads to registration in 2 fields of nursing, not 1. So we have the 3, therefore there's 3 combinations, and we run all 3 possibilities. So we run the 4-year course with adult and child nursing combined, with adult and mental health nursing combined, and with child and mental health nursing combined. And just a few people say, well, I wonder why I might need to do that. And what I encourage you to think about is right back to where we started and some of the comments of my colleagues about the needs of the patients and clients that we deal with. And Martin, for example, mentioned about his own experience of working as an advanced mental health practitioner in an emergency department. That would be a good example. In fact, an emergency department, it is literally any single person ever who might walk through the door with any set of needs that they happen to have at the moment. It might be a child or a young person who is self-harmed or feels the need to self-harm, and we could then think, okay, well, is that set of needs, is that a mental health need? Is it a child-related need? It could be a 10-year-old, or is it an adult need? It might be a 17-year-old with perhaps wounds on their body. And actually, this is a multi-skilled approach that might be needed to support that particular young person. Or we could think about the other end of the age spectrum. Let's think of perhaps older people, traditionally older people, for example, who experience dementia. Age can sometimes be younger, but sadly we know that at the moment a large number of people in the UK, older people, experience dementia from various sources. And I think, well, is that a physical health need? Well, there are physical health needs because the person's unable to care for themselves, perhaps may not be mobile, may not be able to manage nutrition, may not be able to make choices, but also their brain is degenerating or the central nervous system is degenerating. Their behaviours seem to be unusual or inappropriate. Maybe that's more of a mental health spectrum. Maybe that needs a different set of skills. And equally with children and mental health. Children, as Terry mentioned, theoretically up to about 18, 19, 20 and 21 on occasion. And those services are often delivered under CAMS, Child and Adolescent Mental Health Services. Well, again, are the needs purely mental health? Probably not. Are they physical? Probably not. Are they child related? Well, actually, and the same applies. And I believe that everybody on this call, you could probably think of people you know, either from school or college or maybe in your road, who have experienced various sets of needs, and it's quite difficult to just say, well, it's this set of need or that set of need. The fact is, it's a unique individual with unique needs, and actually as nurses, we would want to help them. So this idea of being multi-skilled or multi-registered actually is a really interesting one, and is undoubtedly something which is growing. It's been growing at Southampton. I'm very pleased about that, and it's increasingly popular amongst employers for whom a dual registered nurse is a really useful asset. Now I'm going to stop talking now, and I'm going to pass over to our ambassadors. We'll briefly come back to the dual courses in just a few moments' time, but we've got three ambassadors with us, and I'm going to let them introduce themselves and give us some insight to their life at Southampton so far.
Sorry, my microphone, I was trying to tell the microphone not working. Hi, my name is Texas Ferguson. I'm a dual field student. I'm doing adult and mental health. Sorry, I cannot do it with children. So I chose the other two. It's a 4-year, like Jim mentioned, and I come with a different background. A little bit similar to Terry. I'm an ex-service personnel. And I'm also a mature student. When I heard that term mature student, you know, I was like, you just told me I'm old. However, you know, here I am. So I came completely with different qualifications. As you can, you know, I'm originally from the US. My parents were in the military. I'll travel pretty much all over. So I decided to join because Southampton University gave me the opportunity of doing both fields. I couldn't decide either mental health or adult. In the sense it was because I believe that they, in my own opinion, they should be combined as a one because it will affect. So I wanted to do both. So my support network, for example, started from the beginning when I went to Jim and I said, this is what I got. What can you do for me? I really want to do this. So I brought all my qualifications and so on, and I say, and then, you know, awesomely in July, I got my emails, you know, yeah, you may qualify, you come for an interview. So I got all excited, and, you know, and here I am, you know, nearly three years later. So I'm entering my 3rd year of a dual field. It is a challenge. It comes with ups and downs. But in every down that you get with this university, you get a support mechanism that will allow you to move forward. And that for me, it was, you know, the moment that I decided to come to Southampton is because from the beginning, being able to somebody sit with you and say, let's see what we can do with your qualification, so your dream can come true. For me, that support I started right there, and I came to Southampton University. If you are just leaving high school, as I call it, or Form 1, as the United Kingdom call it, I'm not 100% sure. You know, it's a scary leaving home for the first time, mom and dad and so on. Again, you're gonna find a support mechanism, not just within the university, but other peers among you. You know, they are 19, 17, 21, but at the same time, if you're older, like, you know, like myself with kids, you also gonna find a support mechanism within the adult. So regardless of age, regardless of where you come from, the University of Southampton has it. So it's only a question away that your dreams can become true by becoming either a mental health nurse, an adult nurse, a child nurse, or a combination or any of those three. So when it comes to support, if we don't have it, because it doesn't exist, let me put it like that. So it's always a question away, ask away, and we are here to help. Thank you. This, I'll pass you on to May.
Hello. Sorry for my voice, I'm currently losing it. My name's May. I'm a 4th year adult and child nursing student, so like Texas, a dual field. So I came from the sixth form route, so I did A-levels, and then I came straight into university, never having had any sort of clinical experience, but used stuff like my transferable skills on my UCAS application to show my motivation. So I am here to talk a little bit about accommodation. So I'm from North Wales originally. You may not be able to tell by my accent, but I'm from there. And so it was a long way to come. So I needed to move into halls. And around Southampton, there are various halls, both near the campus, near the city centre, and all of them are connected via bus routes, our Unilink and Blue Star bus routes. So I chose to stay in halls in first year, and if you choose to stay in halls, you receive a free bus pass and you're able to ride on the bus links for free. So I really enjoyed living in halls. In Southampton, you are not placed with nursing students within your halls. It is kind of all mixed, and I found this really beneficial because it made me learn about different courses. It shifted my focus away from my course when I was stressed. It enabled me to talk about my course in a different way to different people, and it meant that I got to know a lot of people, so it was really, really useful. I really loved halls. And then for second and third year, and as well fourth year, I moved into rented accommodation. So around November to January, there are lots of advertisements for student accommodation around Southampton. And from my experience in talking to other people from other universities, the price is very much similar. The price does vary wherever you look, but I've had a really good experience. So yeah, there's an advice centre in the Students' Union if you need any information about accommodation and letting agencies and stuff like that. But that's a little bit about accommodation. I think I was very nervous to move down from North Wales, but as Tex has said, the support here at Southampton is so amazing that I always felt supported in that. I'll now move on to Bethany, who's going to cover a bit about placements for you.
Hello, my name's Beth. My route into nursing is a little bit different. So this is a second degree for me. I did my first degree at the University of Kent and I studied criminology. And then after that, I entered the world of work for about 5 years, doing various jobs within the health and social care sector. And then I decided that I wanted to apply for nursing at the University of Southampton. So I'm now in my final few months of my course, and I've secured my first job in an emergency department, so I'm really excited about that. I'm just going to talk about the placements that I've experienced. So I've had quite a variety of placements. In the community, I did a district nursing placement where I got to go to people's homes and deliver care. I've also had placements within the hospital setting. My current placement at the moment is within Portsmouth and it's on surgical high care. So it's quite high acute. We only sort of have 10 patients and each nurse looks after 3 patients throughout their shift. We do everything for that patient from getting them up in the morning to focusing on rehab of the patient, ensuring that they're actually pain-free so that they can cough and avoid chest infections. So it's quite an important role. It's very diverse. You have to liaise a lot with other healthcare professionals. We speak a lot to the dietitians and to the physiotherapists and to the doctors. There's lots of opportunity within your placements. If you have a particular interest, you can organise a day out somewhere else. So I'm quite interested in gynae and women's health. So I was able, even though I didn't have a placement in that specific area, I was able to go and spend a day in the early pregnancy unit. So whatever placements you have, there is some choice in terms of actually looking at spoke days out. One of the questions that people normally ask is, do you get to choose your placements? The answer is no, but you do get a variety of placements, and the university will ensure that they are mixed from sort of like the community to the hospital setting, which is really useful to know. Next, I'm going to pass on to Texas, who's going to talk about finances.
Right, finances. I mean, it was a huge thing for me, particularly being in the forces for so many years. I didn't know sort of, you know, how much it was going to be or how I was going to come up with the money. And one advice I was given, and have a look at it, for example, Finance England, which is half you can get finance through there for your accommodation, but also as way for the university. It is a scary thing to think about, and it's only because you know, with that money you can't do much. However, there's always help and support. My main advice will have a look at the England Finance website in regards. You can do sort of a free sort of calculation or what can you apply for and so on. But at the same time, at the university, while you enroll, if you have a small problem financially, we have a specialist on at the university who you can go make an appointment and talk to them about, you know, any issues or problems that you can, you know, that you are having. So if financial is a big worry for you, make sure that you do a little bit of background check on you know, how can I borrow from the government, how much will it cost me, and so on. And not just for, you know, for the newly that just left the school, but also as well for, you know, older, pretty much like myself, who, you know, already had a job and need to be able to accommodate sort of life and as well at university and have a balance of both. There's a lot of help and support, but my first advice would be go through England Finance, and then from there, then, you know, the university is also able to step up as in sort of per case needs, if possible, and be able to join university like so. So don't get put off by just the numbers and the figures that you can see. Do your little bit of background search and how are you able to pay for so. In my case, I have received England Finance or paid for the university, and I also applied for maintenance loans, which I paid for my accommodation and the food that we're gonna. So I was sort of set, and now my head was obviously purely in how, you know, get me through the next sort of 4 years of my degree. It lots of help out there. It just matter of going into the right direction to be able to access those help. And then that I'll pass you on to me.
Thank you, Texas, and thank you for talking about finance. I obviously wanted to mention a bit about Student Finance Wales. It's exactly the same. It's exactly the same process as for Student Finance England. Actually, it's a big grating point with my flatmates because Student Finance Wales are largely more generous than Student Finance England. But I wanted to speak a little bit about sports and societies. So I'll give a little bit of a general overview firstly. So in Southampton, there's over 300 sports clubs and societies, and these cover general and specialist subjects, music and media, celebrating faith, culture and international communities, considers social awareness and volunteering, and then also individual and team sports. So there's lots and lots and lots to do, and going on at the moment now that there's new starters are freshers fairs, where you get to see all of the sports all at the same time and choose and pick which you would want to do. But my own experience, so in year 1 I joined the Southampton University Boat Club, which is rowing. I then in years 2 and 3 moved on to the Nightingales netball team, which is the Nursing Society's netball team. And then in year 3 as well, I started kickboxing. Needless to say, I haven't continued with that. But this year in year 4, I'm starting surfing. So I've started a new sport for every year of my degree, and there's enough to do that. But throughout all years as well, I have had a gym membership. So there's various gyms in the uni, there's one on campus and then one in every halls. And with this gym membership, you can gain access to all of the gyms, to the pool, to the climbing walls, to Wide Lane Sports Ground, and to all the fitness classes. So my recent fitness class is Latin Fusion. So this is a very, very extreme dance class, but I just wanted to give that example to show you that there's so many different classes going on. There's one for everyone. And with the pandemic having going on, there's a new app that's been developed by the Sports and Wellbeing Society, which you can see all the classes going on, see all the facilities, and sign up to the membership without even having to go in. So it's very, very useful, and there's lots and lots going on. Other societies that I've joined have included the British Sign Language Society, the Copper Field Society for the University, Uniboob, the Student Minds Peer Support Facilitating Group. I've also taken part in the History Society. So you don't have to be a history student to be part of the History Society, and they have very, very good socials. They have all historical bar crawls, which is very fun. But no, I'd say get out there, take part in any opportunity you can do, because as long as you manage your time well and look after yourself, anything is possible as a student nurse, I think. I'm going to hand over to Beth, who's going to cover employment.
Hello, so it's kind of following on a little bit from what Texas was talking about in terms of finances. A lot of people find that they may need a bit of extra funding throughout their course, so they sometimes look for alternative employment. So one of the places that they might look once they've completed a placement at Southampton is NHSP. So what we tend to say is don't work too much that it affects your degree, but you can be quite savvy with the way that you choose your shifts if you do want to work on the bank. For example, you get more money if you work like a weekend or a night shift. So perhaps you could choose that over like a weekday shift. You just have to plan it out and obviously like budget throughout the month. There is also opportunities for employment whilst you're doing your degree within the university itself, for like open days and things like being a student ambassador, like what we're doing today. I just want to touch on employment sort of after your degree, as I'm coming to the end of my degree now. A lot of people in my cohort have already lined up jobs, and we finish just before Christmas, so that's really promising. But it's just important to say that they're not just any kind of nursing jobs. Most people have the job that they would like, whether that's like in elderly medicine or the community. And I have a friend that's starting in general practice nursing, which I think is quite important to point out, because traditionally people thought that you had to go into the hospital first of all as your first position, but now we're finding that there is so much choice because nurses are needed everywhere. So I'd say aim quite high, and then hopefully you'll achieve something that you want at the end of the course. I'm going to hand back to Jim now, who's going to talk about the structure of the courses and the modules.
Hi, that's really good. Thank you all very much indeed. It's really really helpful. This is going to be a very brief summary of the programs that we actually offer. So what you can see on screen now is 3 BSc programs, so 3-year honours degree programs in either adult or child or mental health nursing. Those are 3-year full-time programs. And over on the right hand side, you can see they will give you an honours degree, providing you pass. You'll have an honours degree and a professional registration in one field of nursing. Those programs are fixed. They are exactly 50% theory, 50% practice, and that's to meet the professional expectations of the Nursing and Midwifery Council. What you can see below that is MNurs. So MNurs is that integrated masters I briefly mentioned earlier. Adult and child and mental health, or mental health and adult. 4-year programs, integrated master's degree, 2 professional registrations, and again, exactly 50-50 theory and practice. Then in the bottom, there's 2 other broader lines of programs: PGDIP, Postgraduate Diploma, and MSc. So one of those is what Beth's doing. Those are 2-year programs, start each January, available in the 3 single programs, not in dual. Those will give you either a postgraduate diploma or a full master's degree and professional registration in that field. And although they're over a shorter period of time, in total, including the prior learning that we recognise before you start, those are 50% theory, 50% practice again. Now clearly we can talk about this detail in much more detail, not going to now, it's not appropriate. Much information is on the website, or we're very pleased to talk about it afterwards with you on a one-to-one basis. I was trying to drop the screen down. Okay, so this slide just briefly demonstrates what we mean by 50% theory, 50% practice. So on the left-hand side, you can see 3 taught modules. This would be an example of any of the Year 1 BSc and MNurs courses. 3 taught modules in the first autumn, finishes about Christmas. After Christmas, a practice placement. Then in the 3rd column, you can see 3 more modules. Those are likely to be taught around the April, May, June time. 3 more run alongside each other, and then another practice placement. And in total, in the first year, so between September perhaps 22 and September 23, you would have completed 6 short modules. You'd have had 2 practice placements, and approximately 60% of your time would have been on taught modules, and roughly 40% on placement. Then in the second year, it would look slightly different to that. There would be 3 placements, and there would be approximately 50% theory, 50% practice. So you've got to the end of year 2, you've then completed 5 taught modules. Sorry, you've had completed 5 placements. And in the 3rd year of a 3-year program, the balance switches, so it's approximately 40% theory and approximately 60% placement. That will be with 2 long placements, which then consolidate the 3 years of your course. Clearly slightly different for the master's program. And just briefly to continue, this is a very brief explanation of how courses are put together. So in terms of placement, the majority of our placements are in Hampshire and the Isle of Wight. The red line doesn't quite go low enough, I'm afraid. Please forgive me for that very minor slip of my pen as I was preparing this. But broadly across all of Hampshire and the Isle of Wight, and we have a few placements outside of that, 1 or 2 in Chichester. We have 1 or 2 child placements in Brighton, and there is not quite, although this is where placements typically are, it's not exclusively so, and it does and can change occasionally on a annual basis. We don't, as somebody has already mentioned, students don't have free choice of placements. That's because we need to make sure that we meet the professional expectations of the Nursing Midwifery Council. We must give you breadth and variety of placement experiences, and so we build that into all of our programs. That's a fixed thing for us. But nonetheless, we do take note of any constraints that students might have. For example, some are car drivers, not many are car drivers. If you're not a car driver, it inevitably limits where we can send you. Some students may have young children, and it's unlikely to be appropriate to then send you to the Isle of Wight, for example. But generally, we will give you a good mix of placements, and they will all relate to the field or fields plural of nursing that you are studying. On the dual programme, approximately 50-50, with almost certainly 1 or 2 of those being in those dual areas, those areas where clients who have shared needs, for example, children with mental health needs, may well be cared for and supported. All students will do at least 1 community placement, and depending on the precise course you're doing, many will actually do 2. They'll be across the age range relevant to the course you're particularly doing, and they will definitely be across the dependency needs. So perhaps from people who are recovering and needing rehabilitation, through to people who are acutely unwell, whose life might be at risk, for example, in neonatal intensive care units, adult intensive care units, maybe in high acuity psychiatric units and mental health units. We cover all of those, and that's a given in all of our programs. Are you the right person for the course? Well, which briefly got onto applications, but it's a really important question to ask yourself. Am I the right person for this particular course? And really, one of the best places to start is, well, what sort of person would you want to care for you or for your immediate relatives, people you love? What sort of nurse would you want to care for them? And it's again for those people who are particularly unwell, not just for someone who's like you now, but for people who may be confused, who are frightened, for people who may be a very different age group to you, for the families of the people we care for. Who would you want to be caring for those people? How would you recognise that person? One thing I often mention is if I, or probably yourselves, if you visit relatives or loved ones in a hospital, you've walked into a particular setting, and within 30 seconds of being there, you've worked out that some of the nurses you think are particularly well suited to caring for your loved one, and others you think, I don't think the relationship's going to be quite so good, or maybe a bit more of a struggle. And that's not a bad way of thinking. What distinguishes that particularly outstanding nurse for you at this time from perhaps the great nurse, but just not quite with that particularly cutting edge that you believe your relative needs? Those are not bad ways of thinking, and we'd encourage you to really think freely about that. And what if you were the patient, what would you want the nurse to be speaking to? How's that going to appear to you? What sort of qualities is that talking about? So those personal qualities are really important to us. We treasure those in selecting students. The students you've heard from today all have those in abundance. We recognised that in them several years ago when they applied. They were amazing, as indeed are all the students we bring onto the programme. But we also look for academic grades. And this is quite difficult to talk about quickly. I can try and give it my best. But for all students, we expect core maths and English. Normally that will be through GCSEs, grade 4 or above, or if you're a little bit older, grade C's or above. For the BSc degrees, for the 3 of them, we look for A levels at BBB. Those are deliberately written as BBB, not ABC. We're deliberately looking for 3 Bs. BTEC, CTECs and the like, you can see the grades over on the right-hand side there. DDM or DDD. Access to higher education, we're very pleased to welcome many students with access to HE. It's not perhaps a back route into nursing, it's a front route in. Somewhere between 25 and 30% of our students start on this basis every year, and you can see the grades there. We'd want a minimum of 27 distinctions and 12 merits. And then, of course, there's the many combinations of A-level, BTEC, and many other programs. Much more detail on our website, or again, I posted my own contact details into the Q&A here already, right at the beginning of that. You're very welcome to contact me direct or my colleagues if you have a particularly different set of qualifications. For the master's courses, those integrated masters, just look for those qualifications being edged up a little bit higher, slightly higher grades. ABB, for example, BBB okay if you're doing a pure science, a bit higher on the BTEC, a little bit higher on the access to HE, and so on. And we can also take many alternatives. We do regularly. Texas would be a good example of that. Qualifications which are not perhaps in the book, but we look for the evidence that you've got the preparation necessary to pass our degree programs. And I just want to flip back, I've just missed one. So what makes a good application? Well, we do look at the whole application. You've got the 4 nursing admissions tutors here today, Martin, Julie, Terry and myself. Between the 4 of us, we will be the ones reading your application, and I can guarantee you that we read everything that's presented to us. We read it carefully, every word. And what we encourage you to do is to pay a little bit of attention to that personal statement to get that right. Now, we can send you a very detailed guide. You will need to email us. It's not on the website, and you're welcome to email us for that. You can email us now, and we'll probably get back to you within 24 hours with that. But just summarising it, 4 key areas to put into a UCAS personal statement if you're thinking of nursing. Why do you want to be a, well, let's put children's nurse for the moment. Why do you want to be a children's nurse? And really the question is there, what we're looking for is, when did the penny drop? How did the penny drop? When was the moment in time when you realised that this is perhaps your aspiration, your perhaps calling on your life, or the area in which you wish to serve other people? There will be very different stories from every single applicant. I know Terry, Julie and Martin fairly well. We've got 4 very different reasons. So we'd be interested to know yours. What made that decision right for you? And what do you understand about the role? What is it that adult nurses, children's nurses, mental health nurses or others do? So that's going to be from perhaps telling us a little bit about your experience, whether that's with family or voluntary work or placement or part-time employment. Absolutely fascinated to see that. It's not what you've done so much as what have you learned. What have you learned about the roles, responsibilities, maybe the stresses and strains of being a particular version of nurse? And tell us briefly about your academic preparation. Why did you choose to do the Access course? What is it about your EPQ or your choice of A-levels that is driving this forward? We can see the courses you're doing. We know what the courses are, but what is it about you doing that course? That's what we'd like to know. That will be just fascinating reading for us. And tell us a little bit about your own personal interests and transferable skills. I'll give you a good example. If you work part-time in McDonald's, for example, I'm not particularly advocating it, by the way, but they pay. It's a good little job for a while. But there'll be many transferable skills, all the customer service training, cash handling, manual handling, food hygiene. Many of those are similar from many other jobs, part-time jobs, or from voluntary roles that you might have within faith groups or sports societies. There will be multiple. We are absolutely fascinated to read them. Not just what you do, not a list really of what you do, but how is that relevant to the nursing course you've applied for. And just finally, very briefly, selection, assuming you're shortlisted, selection this coming year will involve an online interview process, and there will be opportunities at some point to meet current students and academic staff, both online and in person next spring. I just want to hear very briefly, we have an in-person open day on Saturday, the 9th of October, and we'd encourage you to sign up for that if you haven't had the opportunity already. Now, that is the end of our presentation. We're slightly longer than we'd anticipated. That doesn't really matter, but what we're going to do now is to focus on the Q&A. I can see some questions have been put there already, and you're welcome to contact us as admissions tutors. Our 4 email addresses are up on screen, and this presentation will also be made available to you afterwards, and you'll be able to access that in the long run. Certainly for a period of time, I think for a few weeks, you'll be able to access this presentation. But now I'm going to stop screen sharing, and we're going to turn to the Q&A, and hopefully one of my colleagues has already been reading that, probably they've all been reading it, and we can start with something particularly appropriate. I need to access that myself. I did see, and whilst I've still got the microphone, I'm just going to say briefly, I did see a question earlier, can we start with one programme and then change to another part way through? The answer to that very briefly is unfortunately not. I'll give you the reason that's also useful, in that we have a finite number of placements available. It's the number of placements that dictates how many places we have available for specific courses. We've got a fixed number of adult placements, child, mental health, share those between the multiple courses that we have. So we recruit a specific number to each of the courses we have, 6 undergraduate programs, 6 postgraduate programs, plus an international program for postgraduate. And really important, we get the right number. So we have to have the right number really from the outset. And I'm afraid there isn't opportunity to switch part way through. If you're not sure about that, one thing we might encourage you to do, and many many do, is to apply for a dual course. We would then look at your application with that dual application in mind. If it's amazing, we will indeed offer you the dual course. We would love to do that. For many people, we just get a sense that it's a single course that's more appropriate for you rather than the dual. And we would then offer you that single course. So from that dual application, for example, for adult and child, yes, we would consider you for the adult and child, but also within that, we'd also be looking at you for single adult and the single child course. And we will do our best. We may negotiate with you as to what is most appropriate course for you to enrol on at this particular time. So I'm going to pass to somebody else. I'm not quite sure who the microphone's going to. I need to be led by others on that.
Hi, thank you, mate. That whisper, I like it. So the life as a student is, gosh, where can I start? I know that we came here to study. However, you can, if you study hard, I think you have the right to play hard. And like May was mentioning, we have a lot of society that you can join, but also we have a lot of bars where you can join your friends and say hello from time to time without moving away too much from your studies. And it's, you know, if you're a sporty person, you're gonna find it here. If you are a cat person, you're gonna find a cat association here. Believe me, I went through and I pretty much look anything imaginable and they do it. The main advice for me will be, don't forget the main reason why you are attending university. If you focus on that, the other words, it become a enjoyable, a question to be able to be. There's lots of society. There's a lot of things to do around Southampton. But the same thing, you know, you meet other amazing people like from other countries. And you can learn another language if you have the sort of the free time. Is the ability that you have to have a balance. In university, about life depends on a balance that you give it. That you have enough to never forget what your main purpose is, but at the same time, we are all young and you want to go out. It's the first time out of the house, and then you want to have fun. You can still do that. But bear in mind that the main reason you come here is to become not a good nurse, but a great nurse. And that is sort of what a university, it is looking as well. As long as you can have a balance of those two, you'll be absolutely fine. May?
Hi. So my voice is going even more now. I just wanted to talk a little bit about additional opportunities. So as I mentioned, there's lots for you to do in terms of sports and societies, but also there's lots of additional opportunities you can take part in that are voluntary roles. So some of these that I've undertaken have been roles such as course representatives. So in some of your high schools or in some of your colleges, there will be school councils, and on these there you can sit and represent your colleagues. And this is the same in universities, and it's attached to a students' union which also runs sports and societies too. So I was a course representative in year two and 3, and it really gave me the confidence to gather feedback, to present my views and to make change really. And last year I took part in the Hampshire and Isle of Wight Student Nurse Council, which is now a student council. I chaired this, and this, you may have seen this within the region, this aims to make change on a strategic level. So this was a paid role and is another part of the part-time employment that you can take within your studies too, but it also meant that I could make a difference. So that was really, really good. There's also opportunities like what we're doing at the moment, so student ambassadorship. There's student buddy sessions that can support students, also provide you with experience and the confidence. Then Additional opportunities that you could take part in would be to expand your skills, so take part in focus groups. So I've taken part in focus groups with Soul and Mind, taken part in focus groups with different partner groups to create peer mentoring schemes. So I think the aim of this is what you're doing at the moment, the impetus you're creating with all these opportunities you're getting to gain skills, to prepare your personal statement, that doesn't have to stop when you start university. You can study, you work hard with your study, you have fun, but you can also gain so many more skills too. So that was what I wanted to talk a little bit about. We're going to go to Bethany, who's going to cover a day in the life of a student nurse.
Hello again. I'm quickly going to give you an overview about the day in the life of a student nurse. So you tend to have a mixture of theory and skills during placement. So you might so those that have visited the campus in person, you might have seen some of the skills labs already. We do a lot of practice of the skills ahead of placement, so that you feel quite confident before actually going on to your placement. So some of the skills that we might do is like cannulation, taking blood, and we do like a lot of role play. So for example, mocking a skill of like having a difficult conversation. So you could practice these skills in a safe environment and then take them with you when you actually go on to placement, so you feel a little bit more confident. There's usually a few breaks as well during the day, so you can have coffee on the campus with your friends, or perhaps you want to go to the library. There's also lots of events that you can do as well. So it's quite a hectic sort of busy day, but you also have lots of time to plan your own skills. So you might need to do some like self-studying in your own time. So it's a bit different from a school or sixth form, where you actually like have a structured timetable. Some of the timetable, there is gaps where you need to sort of plan your independent study. So I think it's quite important, once you've sort of settled in a bit after the few weeks, is to work out how you're going to study yourself. I'm going to pass on to Jim now. I think he has a few things to say.
Jim always has lots of things to say. It's very, sometimes too much, but we're here to support you this afternoon. So we want to make sure that you get as much advice as we possibly can. There's a question much earlier on about experience, or appropriate experience relevant to supporting an application. The question was particularly around an application for mental health, and excuse me for just forgetting who that was from, but the principle around prior experience is that one is the university. It's very difficult for the university to insist on experience. That's not always possible, and if we're honest, many people at the time of applying will not yet be 18 years old, and it can be extremely difficult to get appropriate, at least good quality experience prior to 18, when care homes and the NHS, for example, might offer employment. But it doesn't necessarily need to be in care. We'll just try and explain briefly. So, for example, if you are a young person, if you're doing a health and social care type course, you will almost certainly have some placement experience built into your course. We just encourage you to really max out on that. If there's opportunity to do more, please do that. And if you can, try and influence those experiences so they align to the area of nursing you're hoping to study in the future. For example, working with children and young people, or with older adults, that would be fine. In our experience, the quality of such placements is sometimes mixed, just being honest. Sometimes you don't have much opportunities to do anything other than observe. And if you do have opportunity for more hands-on in any setting, we would definitely encourage you to do that. For children's nursing, any experience would be suitable. Care home, nursing home would be suitable, because you'd be working with people, you'd be working with people who have need, both physical and emotional and probably mental health needs. That's really useful. Whilst the age group is very different, it will involve closeness, it will involve touch physically, touch emotionally. That is invaluable experience, and we always advocate such experience. But for children and young people's nursing, if it could be with children who have perhaps additional need, with developmental delay and similar, that can also be very useful. I would encourage you always to go with a learning mind, not building up a sort of set of stories about the children or families or adults you've cared for, but what have you learned from that? What are the needs you see? Several of us have mentioned what is the sort of trying to put yourself in the shoes of the people we care for. That's really quite a difficult thing to do, and if you can begin to learn some of that as a young person, that is honestly amazing. If you're over 18, then if it's possible, we particularly encourage you to seek experience in local care homes, nursing homes, maybe on a voluntary basis. Some of that is returning post-COVID, or as we're semi-post-COVID. There are also certainly opportunities now for employment, particularly part-time employment in many nursing and care homes. And whilst you may not experience full nursing care, what you will experience is the needs of people who have physical needs, who are confused, who have dementia, who are unable to respond normally in time and place, and that will give you good exposure to some of the types of needs that you experience. Again, come at it from a learning point of view. And not a bad idea, I've mentioned this to many people in the past, whether that's voluntary experience, placement experience, or part-time work. Why not, at the end of each day, just write yourself a few quick notes in a log. What have I learned today? What have I seen today that challenged me? What have I seen today that surprised me? What didn't I like? What type of needs did I see? You're not talking about individuals, you're not naming individuals, but what have I learned today? And I think what you'll find is after just a few weeks, you can look back and think, wow, that is amazing. So many things I've come across, I've encountered that have not been part of my life before, but they would be life-changing moments. And I really encourage you to do that. That is not a dissimilar style to what we also encourage students to do whilst they're on course. And that can be really handy. And for the person who was asking, I think the question was particularly around working with children and young people in support settings or in more direct care settings. I think you've had the experience of both. That's really handy. In going forward, probably it's the care setting that would be more useful to you, but don't feel that that's what we're making you do. That's not the case at all. We want you to do well. See some of the questions. I'm not looking at any particular question now around qualifications, one, two around sciences. So we are fixed on wanting grades. We publish grades on the website. It talks about 3 Bs from A levels, for example, for BSc courses. What we mean by that is if you make a successful application, which I really hope you do, then an offer would come back to you as requiring 3 Bs or better, which is a bonus. That means that we're not guaranteeing to accept grades of A, B, C. We may do, but there's no guarantee. In some years we do, but I can't predict what 2022 will be like. So what I encourage you to do is to work hard, max out support from your school or college or sixth form, and aim for those 3 Bs or better. If you're predicted a B, aim for an A. If you're predicted a C, aim for a B, and so on. And that's a good thing to do. And if that's then reflected in your predicted grades, even better. Same applies really for access courses and any other preparation that you're doing. We strongly encourage you to max out on learning now, because that's going to be really useful to you if you come on one of our courses. In terms of the dual courses, we know there's lots of interest in those. The grades we want can be slightly more confusing, and that we publish ABB or BBB. It's not because we don't know what we're doing, we do. What we mean is that if you are studying 3 A levels that include a pure science, maths, chemistry, or chemistry, maths, or biology, not maths at all. If you're studying one of those 3, then the offer would come automatically as BBB. However, if you're not studying a pure science, and we would welcome your application. If you're studying art subjects, humanities subjects, non-pure science subjects, maybe A-level law, you've been inspired by Martin, then that's fine, that's great. Your offer would come out at ABB. So if you like, because you're studying a pure science, we just moderate those grades very slightly. And similar with access, slightly higher grades and so on. And just whilst I remember the question, because I remember scrolling through it briefly just now, somebody asked a question about if I apply for a dual course, does that mean I don't necessarily need to apply for a single course? Well, it's very difficult for us to advise you precisely on that, but generally speaking, no, you don't also need to apply for a single course. I'll give you an example which may be relevant to that particular inquirer. So if at other universities you're contemplating children's nursing, and with us you're contemplating dual adult and child, or dual child and mental health, then indeed we'd encourage you to apply to this university, for Southampton, just for the dual course. What that means is that you're going to end up writing your personal statement that suit the majority, which will be children's nursing. So what we'd hope for is that you would write an amazing personal statement that is going to convince every university of your suitability and aspirations for children's nursing. What that means is that all the universities will see that and they will think, wow, this looks really good. And you'll have a good opportunity of success at each of those universities. But for Southampton, and bear in mind it's Southampton that's encouraging you to say this, we would say, right, dual application for adult and child or adult and mental health, but the personal statement is particularly focused on child. But we're encouraging you to do that. What we're also encouraging you to do, and what it adds in the personal statement guide that you can email us for, is that we're encouraging you to send us a separate personal statement. The same day you send off your main UCAS application, send us an additional personal statement specific to dual. And essentially what you'd be doing is to take that one personal statement you've already written and add to it. You don't need to take anything off it. You make it a bit longer than the 4,000 characters UCAS allow you. You can add a paragraph or two to it, and you're just explaining in a little bit more detail your particular aspiration for, so this example, adult and mental health, or adult and or child and adult. And that's really helpful, and we will look at both personal statements at the same time when we determine your application. So that is a hint and a tip around that. It works well. We've been doing that for a number of years, and we're explicitly suggesting that's the best approach. So I don't know what else is going on in the chat. To be honest, I'm old, I can't multitask as well as my colleagues, and so I'm not, whilst I'm speaking, I'm not looking at the chat, the Q&A at the same time. So I'm not sure.
Jim, I think you've answered the majority of the questions. And what I was going to suggest is just do, because we've got a lot of people who've had careers but are also doing degrees, just like a best bit about your degree or about your career. So if you wanted to start.
Okay, best bit in terms of, we're chatting to each other now, but best bit in terms of
anything, best experience, okay. Best reflection.
Okay, all right, thank you. Okay, it's really good. Okay, I'll kick off as I've got the microphone. So for myself, I'm an adult nurse by background. I trained in the old system of general nursing, similar to Terry. She predates me by a few months, but it is very, very little. I've had a varied career, not as varied as Terry and Martin, or Julie, I believe, but so my career has been in various intensive care units in south of England, and particularly in Southampton for many years, working in the regional cardiac unit. And essentially, if you cut me up, it says cardiac all the way through. And ended up doing a number of roles there, working with adults and children, although I'm not child trained. Did spend a number of years working in children's nursing, children's cardiac nursing, and ended up managing the whole unit. and then many years since in education. I still enjoy working with patients, and as if I can call myself a mature nurse, I still practice occasionally. And in fact, the practice has been in many different areas. And it's interesting, as I've got a little bit older, hopefully a little bit more mature, what I find is that whatever need is before me, in fact, I can make a response. And yeah, I often have no direct experience, and I don't necessarily have specific skills, but I seem to be able to turn my mind to it. Now, it's not because I'm particularly brilliant. Actually, it's because I believe as we mature in nursing, we begin to see much more of the big picture of the need of the people in front of us. Now, this is what we teach students in the outset. So I think all the students here are probably 20 or 30 years ahead of me. But for me, it's taken a little bit of a while to recognise how I can respond to people with dementia. I'm not trained in dementia. In fact, I have no particular mental health training really whatsoever. But what I find is that I can respond, and I can respond well to the needs of those people, or of children, or of distressed families, or of people with learning difficulties or learning disabilities, or of children whose families are fearful for the future. Am I expert in those? Definitely not. But can I respond? Yes, I believe I can. I won't be as good as many other people. In fact, I may not be particularly good at all. But in the moments, I believe it's good enough. It seems to support. And I feel that's a privilege. The word's been used many times, and it's not, I use it seriously in that if I'm faced with somebody in need, I believe that experience, that growth through nursing, that learning about people, learning about needs, actually we can begin to do that quite well. And I think that, I believe all of us, all of my colleagues here, the academic colleagues here as well, exactly the same applies to our students. We enjoy supporting students because for students life goes on as well. And you know, I count it a privilege to be able to support students who are having a difficult time. For a student who's experienced bereavement, which nobody wanted to experience, but it's a reality. For a student who's been ill, there's different sets of needs, and I think to me that's some of the privileges. I'm still nursing, not so often hands-on, but very much in what I do in life, as well as with students in my job. I'm still nursing, and you know, I don't know how long I'm going to live for. I hope a fair old while to come, but you know, I believe those are skills that stay with us and will endure, and that's simply amazing. And I'd encourage all of you who are aspiring to nursing, think big, think well outside the box, because 40 years ago I had no idea of the things I would see and do, the countries I would visit in my roles. Amazing privileges, and lives change because of it. And I believe still now, as a slightly older academic, I'm still in a position of being able to change lives for the better. I want to come and jump on the ship with us. It's amazing. So I'll pass on to somebody else now. I don't know who's going to be next.
Is that me, did you say, sorry? Oh yeah, I'll keep it really brief because I know we're tight for time. But two things. First of all, the most positive things. First of all, role or post. My last job, I absolutely loved that job. I was a head of legal services and head of patient safety across an entire trust, so I was corporate, but could operationally move from place to place. So I could be in A&E, then it might be in acute ward, might be in paediatrics, might be in maternity, managing dealing with complex technical, legal, medical cases. It was fascinating, really loved that kind of role. But of course, and I know most will give examples of this, and my example that came to my mind is too emotive to discuss or disclose right now, but it was saving life. I saved a life once and did not expect it. I was dynamically risking a situation in A&E, and it just fell my way, and it happened. And these things happen on what's the song called about? It will happen on some banal Tuesday morning when you just didn't expect it. You know, this wear sunscreen song, and it will. And your career will be like that. It'll be ups and downs like that, because there'll also be negatives when they won't. And as I think Terry said before, you know, the worst thing, a child might die. You know, so you'll have bad days too, but you will have amazing days. And that's the yin of yang, the labile nature of the work that keeps us drawn and coming back to this career. And I'm going to have to shoot now, Jim. I'm really sorry, but I think I'm handing over to Julie. Am I? I'll go on mute.
Thank you, Martin. So when I think back to the high bits of my career, I was a qualified registered nurse when I was 20. I decided to come to England for a couple of years experience, and I loved it so much I'm still here. I've worked across a huge range of specialties, been a ward sister in a gastro ward. I set up the first acute assessment unit in the country that took patients directly from GPs, and obviously prevented the gridlock in the emergency department. So to think I would have led that when I was 17 and starting out as a student nurse, I would never have believed it. I've held a number of senior leadership posts in the NHS, turned teams around, was sort of my key skill, was going into teams and working with them and to turn them into more highly performing teams, and I love that. I love making a difference. I love making a difference to our patients, to our students and to our colleagues. I think that's really important. The chief executive at my hospital was one of my role models because she started off as an oncology nurse and then was the chief executive of our local trust, which was just amazing. I was nominated for services to healthcare when I was a clinical services manager in the NHS, and I was invited to Buckingham Palace for an evening reception with the Queen, and she talked to me for 20 minutes about what it was like to be, you know, to work in the NHS. That was amazing. I will never forget it. So the experiences have been amazing, and most importantly, it's the difference you make to patients and their families. I went into Marks and Spencer's one day, I was in the queue and I could see the checkout lady looking at me and I thought, wonder do I look a bit suspicious or something? But when I got to the top of the queue, she said, you looked after me 10 years ago. And I said, did I? And she said, yes. She had been in hospital for 3 days. She'd asked for a pillow on a number of occasions. She didn't get the pillow. I came on duty, she asked for a pillow, I went and got her a pillow, and that's what she remembered. And that just shows patients won't always remember what you did, but they'll remember how you did it for them. And I was in a card shop recently, and I could see the checkout girl sort of looking at me again. I thought, goodness. And she came over and she said, you looked after my sister. And her sister was only in her 40s. She passed away. She had a 13-year-old child. And she said, and you were the one that got the camp bed so my niece could stay in the side room with her mum. And then she got all tearful and emotional. So just those are just the highlights of my career, making such a difference to people, their families, and to getting the opportunities I've had that I would never have believed. So it's such an amazing career. And I will now pass you over to Bethany. Thank you, Bethany.
Hi, so the highlight for me is, so my first placement was on a renal satellite unit. So it was in the community, but still connected to the main hospital. And then when I was on my 5th placement, I saw one of the patients in the corridor at the hospital, and he recognised me and said to me, I'm just coming into the hospital now for follow-up post kidney transplant. And he was like so happy, lifting his top up and showing me his scar. And I thought it was just really nice that he recognised me, and it was just good to see that he had a really positive outcome, because he was quite young. He was about in his early 30s, and he had a little girl as well, so that was really nice. I'm going to hand over to Terry next.
You're on mute, Terry.
One of these days I will remember to unmute the mic. What I was saying was, like Jim, I've been nursing for far more years than I can often remember or care to admit to. So we, as with Jim, have had many different experiences. But I think the most uplifting experiences have been when I've cared for a child over a long period of time who we weren't sure what the outcome was going to be, but they actually went home. Now, whether their outcome once they went home was going to be long or short, that wasn't the issue. It was getting them out of the hospital into an environment they wanted to be in. And that's part of the role of being a good children's nurse. And I feel like I worked in an area, particularly with acute assessment and unscheduled care. We saw a lot of children who were acutely unwell who did get better and went home. One in particular who did go home was with us for over a year in the unit I worked in. So I worked in one bit of the unit, but I popped in to see him regularly, got to know his parents really well. And it was the most fantastic day when we managed to get the services in place and he went home. The other thing that stands out in my mind as you were talking is rather like Julie, people recognise you. And sometimes I don't recognise them and I'm terrible with names. So I often think it's because I can't remember the name and think, well, maybe they were a child and now they're an adult and that's why I don't recognise them. It's even more scary when it was their child who has now grown up and standing next to them. So the mum recognises me, but the child doesn't, because of course they were 2, 3, 4, whatever. And they're saying, thank you, look at them now. So look at him now, look at her now. They're going to university, or they've just started their first job, or they're having their first baby, makes me feel even older, or they're getting married or whatever. It's being a part of that life journey of theirs. And I think as a nurse, you need to remember that you are part of that journey and that they will remember you for the positive way you, positive impact you have on that journey. So I will now hand over to Texas, I think.
Right, I still got a journey to continue as I'm on my third year, but so far, I think for me, one of the best things is I absolutely love old people. I mean, I'm talking about 80s and 90s and 100s. So I've been in my community placements. I usually get told off because apparently I'm spending too much time with the patients, talking to them, particularly, you know, they have similar backgrounds. I remember particularly this patient who was horrible to all of my colleagues. So I went in and he happens to be ex-military. And that was our connection. And from there, you know, it was pretty much he will not see anybody else unless I was there. And I found that connection with this particularly, you know, person who born in 1901 or 1900, you know, something older, to be respectful. But for me, it was that connection that I had. And they remind me why I became a nurse is to be able to take those moments. Yeah, life is going to be up and down. You're going to have hard days sometimes. You're going to have good days sometimes. But those are the things that recharge your battery back again and highlight the importance why you became a nurse. And also part of me is the support that I got from the university, particularly in the times when you go to a placement and something happens that is tragic, that is overwhelming, that is you like, oh my gosh, it shake your grounds up a little bit. But the support that you will get through placements, through their tutor, I can guarantee you that it'll be absolutely excellent because I got it. And I'm telling you, as experience, that no matter what you're going through, there's always somebody who can help. And that is the beauty of it. So hope to see you guys soon at the university. Oh, and by the way, I'm in the brochure, so you'll be able to see me. Thank you.
It's me. So my final bit of information, my best bit, was on my third placement. I was on the Isle of Wight, and usually people are like, oh, the Isle of Wight's a bit far away, but it was one of my best placements because I got so many more opportunities. And one thing that I got to do was I got to visit Parkhurst and Albany prisons. I used my links on that placement to go to the prisons, and it opened my mind to such a different healthcare system. And I just really wanted to tell that story to highlight that you can go anywhere. With your nursing degree, you can go into so many different areas when you finish. You can visit so many areas whilst you're here. I've been to safeguarding teams. I've been to urgent response teams. I've seen so many different surgeries as a nurse, as a student, that it's such a great experience, and it's made me see so many different things. So yeah, like Texas said, I really hope to see you not only in Southampton, but if you want to go somewhere else, that's your prerogative, but I really want to see you at Southampton. I'm just going to go to Jim, who will finish us off.
Finish us off in a nice way. We've really enjoyed having you with us this afternoon. It's been a privilege again. That sounds like overuse of the word, but we enjoy sharing about our experiences. I hope you sense that we're not just a little bit keen, but actually we're passionate. This is who we are, and we're not related to each other. We come together. What we have in common is nursing. Nursing as students, as lecturers, it's who we are, and we would love you to join us. And some people find that it's a bit more complicated, but the thing to do is talk to us. Please talk to us. We like to have a relationship with you before the course, as well as during the course and after the course, as we've heard. And those are great moments for us, and they are moments that make a difference to the profession. Nursing needs more people. It needs more people like you. It needs people who aspire to make a difference. We started off with that word, be extraordinary. Well, actually, see, I've been around a long time. I don't want nurses to be like they were 20, 30, 40 years ago. In fact, it's quite difficult for me to define how we'd like them to be in another 10, 20 years' time. I don't know the future any more than you. But what I do know is that we want people to be cared for to the very highest standards possible for each individual person. And that means continually doing things differently, looking at what's best. And we're a university that strives for that best. We'll offer you immense support. You'll have immense opportunities. Your learning will be second to none. The people who teach you will be at the very forefront of their fields. We believe that's what's going to make exceptional, extraordinary future nurses. So we'd love you to join us. Thank you for spending time with us now. Next Saturday on the 9th, we have an in-person open day, the last one of the year. It's on the campus. We will be both outside and inside. You'll be able to see our building, be able to talk to people like us and to other ambassadors in as much depth as you want. You're welcome to bring family members with you. Those can be quite influential times. We'd encourage you to do that if that's possible for you. If not, please drop us a line. Our email addresses are being quite visible. Please don't hesitate to drop us a quick line, even if it's just to say hello, in order for us to begin to offer you a bit more support that's going to suit you. Thank you very much indeed. Have a lovely weekend.